Good evening to you both, and let's begin with an Edmonton infill project that's fueling neighborhood frustration in a sea of bungalows and split levels. This new development in Forest Heights certainly sticks out.
The next thing I know, I've got that 3-story up looking down on me.
Just 2 years ago, the property featured a bungalow. Now, Julian LaPlante and his wife plan to live in the middle of 3 single-family homes they're building on the 90-foot lot, making for some uncomfortable conversations as they introduce themselves.
We're excited to be part of the neighborhood.
Well, it's a very, very nice neighborhood, but I just don't like what's happening.
There are anti-infill signs on lawns nearby, raising population, parking, waste collection concerns, but LaPlante didn't build an 8-plex like zoning allows.
We really want to make sure that, this wasn't a this lot could be used for something a lot different, and we want it to be an asset to the community, not a detriment.
The city councillor for the area says while zoning bylaws are being followed, $1 million single-family homes are not the infill the city is trying to encourage.
Part of the reason we are moving forward with a number of changes in our zoning bylaws to diversify the types of housing we're seeing so that we can start to integrate more affordable options into our neighborhoods. And now council is expected to debate zoning changes next week. Ellen, is this just a product of the evolving dynamics of maturing neighborhoods in our bigger cities and a conversation around affordable housing? What do you make of the debate building in Edmonton?
Yeah, we see this in Calgary. The same story is everywhere. A year ago, we had a blanket rezoning that passed despite the tremendous number of people who came and spoke against it. I think that, for example, I think 7,000 people came forward. 88% were not in favor of it. It went ahead anyway. It's a product, I would say, of probably a broken immigration system. It's a product of course, these changing neighborhoods and more people coming in. I think it's a product of times, but also I think it's quite frankly a bit of a lazy approach that happened. And I'm really hoping that there's reconsiderations in both cities and we have more unique ways of approaching each neighborhood instead of just one idea.
And on that point then, Dan, how much of a say do you feel existing neighborhoods, residents should have before municipalities green light developments of this nature?
Is there less than zero? This is where I get extremely libertarian. I don't think it's any of your business what your neighbors build. I really do think that. I live in a downtown area. I see lots of neighborhoods that are lots of houses that are being torn down to be replaced by front back duplexes, fourplexes, all the time. It makes for a better neighborhood. And this is the kind of building that we're going to have to do if we're going to accommodate the number of people that are moving to our cities. And the idea that immigration has anything to do with construction bylaws in either of our cities is kind of insane to me. This is the inevitable reality of cities growing. There's lots of people that wish we still lived in 1975. We don't anymore. This is the reality of the world we live in.
Ellen, to your point, huge talking point, huge bone of contention in Calgary over the past number of months. So how does this all filter down into the upcoming municipal elections in either of the 2 big cities?
Yeah, I think it has a huge factor. It's definitely one of the biggest topics here in Calgary. I do believe that we should have a lot of say as taxpayers. And, we're not considering things like the impact of all of the bins. I mean, there's units in my neighborhood in Hillhurst, in an older neighborhood in Calgary, where there's 20 bins and the traffic is insane. Our neighborhood hasn't been able to keep up with what's happening. And that's what I'm referring to. And I think that we need to be more thoughtful. I feel like it's a huge, obviously, election issue and one that will be seriously a factor, I think, for all of the mayoral candidates to speak to.
Yeah, and in the short term, it's going to, for Edmonton, it's coming up at City Council next week. All right, next up for us, a new warning this week about artificial intelligence. It may be coming for your job. In advertising first, this AI-generated commercial recently ran on American Primetime TV. Everything created in just 2 days using text prompts, something that would previously require a production crew, and is an example of job disruption this Canadian AI pioneer worries about.
I think if you make lots and lots of people unemployed, even if they get universal basic income, they're not going to be happy.
The Nobel Prize-winning computer scientist says the tech he helped develop could soon enable one person to do the work of 10.
And I think for mundane intellectual labor, AI is just going to replace everybody.
Now, according to StatsCan, 3 out of 5 Canadian workers are employed in occupations with a high potential for exposure to AI. As for how smart chatbots are,
last year at this time, the top model had an IQ of about 97. This year, it had an IQ of 137.
Jeffrey Hinton is calling for limits to be placed on the development of AI and more government regulation. Dan, where does the ever-expanding impact of artificial intelligence land on your radar? How seriously do you think we should be taking these warnings from the so-called Godfather of AI?
Well, I think we should be taking the warning seriously. We should be adjusting, but there's some other major concerns as well that we need to be concerned about, which is water consumption and power consumption. The AI, even to do the not great stuff that it does right now, consumes massive amounts of fresh water. It consumes massive amounts of energy. What we've seen throughout the U.S. is that these AI companies make sweetheart deals with the power companies, and then the cost of that ends up being passed on to the regular buyer. This is a major concern. And also, when we talk about people trying to move into Canada for more control, it's the fresh water that they're interested in to cool AI. This is a major problem. And the reality is, I'm an AI skeptic. I don't think they're nearly as far along as they claim that they're going to be. And there's a bit of a tech bubble that's going to burst here because OpenAI is bleeding money like you wouldn't believe. And they keep trying to generate this interest in it. So I'm not really worried about the economic interest as much as I'm interested in the environmental impact of AI and what are we going to do about that.
Ellen, the three of us, we're all parents. So what does this say to you about all of our children's futures and what considerations they should have, even with careers looking forward?
Yeah, I think that considerations are, of course, in the trades. There's going to be a huge opportunity there. Many things can't be taken over with AI. I mean, even in my line of work, communications, of course, there is a lot that can be taken over with AI, but ultimately AI can't host certain types of events or, inspire people to donate large amounts of money to charity organizations, or that human touch will always be there. But I do believe that, professions like lawyers, professions where you have to mine a lot of data, all of those things may be a risk to AI, but I agree about the environmental implications and I'm concerned more so there as well. But yeah, trades are going to be a big part of the future, I believe.
The Calgary Stampede begins 1 week from today, and working away in the background will be teams of researchers conducting a trio of studies, including one exploring the impacts of shade. Last summer, researchers found some rodeo animals showed signs of discomfort in the heat. This year, tents will be set up and monitored.
We need to have some sort of facts and data to lead us as to what the right direction is. And it's also, like I said, sure, shade should make the animals cooler, but is it set up the right way? Are there other ways that, the configuration, the material of the shade that's provided?
Another of the studies will analyze the track and how horse movements change over the days of racing. And a third will use blood tests and ECGs to study the hearts of horses in chuckwagon races.
In horse equine studies, it's very difficult to have a large number of animals. If you read the literature, you have basically two types of studies. You have the studies in a lab, an equine lab, where you have honestly published 6 to 10 horses. And you have the field studies where it's really hard to get 50, 100 horses.
Now, the Stampede and the university have been teaming up for more than 10 years to study animals on the grounds and drive improvements in safety. Ellen, what do you make of the role of these research efforts, the role they're playing, and the need to remove elements of risk where rodeo animals are concerned?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think anytime we have animals in a space like the Stampede and in the rodeo, we need to have the best information, the best research, the best knowledge. We need to invest in these animals the way that the ranchers invest in these animals. Like, these animals are so cared for. They're trained year round. They're prepared. It's, part training and instinct, that what they're designed to do for, generations of these ranching families. So I think it's going to legitimize and verify what these ranching families are doing with their own animals. And I think it's fantastic.
Dan, how far do you see research like this going to addressing concerns raised by animal rights groups who have long called for the rodeo portion of the stampede to be eliminated?
Well, I don't think it's ever going to entirely mitigate the risk for some groups of people, and I don't think it's ever going to entirely mitigate the risk for the animals either. These are athletes, and in the same way that we all, like, I'm a big sports fan. I love watching sports, and there's a risk that these athletes, both human and equine, take on every time they engage in a sporting event for entertainment, and that's something that we ought to consider. Is that, like, are we taking care of them and making sure that we're making it as safe as possible? And if this research goes a long way to do that, then let's make sure that we're doing it and doing more of it to ensure that it's safe for the future as well.
And Ellen, as a Calgarian, have to ask, how excited are you for the return of Stampede this year? What does it mean for your work environment? Shania Twain's on the way. Braid Marshall.
Oh, I think, yeah, very exciting. I think it's fantastic. I'm a huge supporter of our economy and our small business community, and I have many, many family friends who are multi-generational ranchers. So I'm a big fan, and I'm very excited, and I think it just really puts Calgary on the map internationally, which is fabulous.
All right. Speaking of putting on the map, Jasper put on the map this week, and it's because of a video that you can't help but be mesmerized by. Kelly Paxian and her husband were driving down Moline Lake Road in Jasper National Park last weekend when they spotted a moose. They pulled up to a stop to give it room and maybe opportunity to wander away, but instead, moose moseyed on over to the side of the vehicle, even going so far as to stick its nose inside the open passenger side window.
He just seemed to be going about his day, and knowing what we know from our previous wildlife encounters, we were just like, we are just going to remain calm as possible and let the animal control the interaction. So we just let it play out.
Yeah, and she would know about animal interactions. Paxian spends most of her time in South Africa running a safari business. Dan, how do you think you'd respond? We're a moose to casually wander up to the vehicle, mosey on over, give you a good sniff.
Well, I think I would probably do the same thing, where I'm just like, the moose is allowed to do whatever the moose wants to do. That's what moose get to do. I think this is great, and it's an amazing thing. I'm not a wildlife activity expert, so I don't know if this means that the moose is healthy or unhealthy. I think the concern I have is that people who don't know any better might decide that, oh, I'm just going to wander up to moose to become friends with them. It's probably not a good idea. These people seem to know what they were doing, but if you're just a general person like me, try to avoid moose encounters as much as you possibly can. They are wild animals.
Yeah. Ellen, any lessons to be learned from an up-close and personal encounter like this?
Yeah, animals are unpredictable. I don't want to encourage people habituating wildlife, because we want to, of course, protect the wildlife, and they, of course, did the right thing by letting the animal kind of control the interaction. And if you're uncomfortable with that situation, keep your windows rolled up, I guess, is another lesson learned there. But yeah, it was a fun video to watch.
It was. And I do like the advice about rolling up the windows. And one interesting element of that, the moose kept licking the side of the vehicle, the mirror. And you have to think, well, maybe that goes back to some remnants from winter and maybe some salt on the vehicle. And that's what the moose was looking for. All right. We have to leave it there. We're out of time. Good to see you both. Hope you have a great long weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.